Hi everyone. So Juneteenth is a term I've never heard before. As a Brit, obviously we know about Independence Day. You kicked our asses, but Juneteenth is something that I've never even seen in popular culture. So I thought, why not go down the rabbit hole and find a little bit more about it? So here's a clip from Ted.
One day, while hiding in the kitchen, Charlotte Brooks overheard a life-changing secret. At the age of 17, she'd been separated from her family and taken to William Nealon's Texas plantation. There, she was made to do housework at the violent whims of her enslavers. On that fateful day, she learned that slavery had recently been abolished, but
Imagine that. Imagine actually learning that you were supposed to be free. You were being kept as.
Nealon conspired to keep this a secret from those he enslaved. Hearing this, Brooks stepped out of her hiding spot, proclaimed her freedom, spread the news throughout the plantation, and ran. That night, she returned for her daughter, Tempe. And before Nealon's spiteful bullets could find them, they were gone for good. For more than 2 centuries, slavery defined what would become the United States. From its past as the 13 British colonies to its growth as an independent country. Slavery fueled its cotton industry and made it a leading economic power. 10 of the first 12 presidents enslaved people.
That's interesting. So there were 2 presidents that didn't keep slaves. If someone could tell me what that was about, who it was, and why that was the case.
And when U.S. chattel slavery finally ended, it was a long and uneven process. Enslaved people resisted from the beginning by escaping, breaking tools, staging rebellions, and more. During the American Revolution, Vermont and Massachusetts abolished slavery, while several states took steps towards gradual abolition. In 1808, federal law banned the import of enslaved African people, but it allowed the slave trade to continue domestically.
So basically, they were not actually importing more slaves, bringing more slaves across, but they were probably still breeding the existing population, which is evil, really evil.
Approximately 4 million people were enslaved in the U.S. when Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860. Lincoln opposed slavery, and though he had no plans to outlaw it, his election caused panic in southern states, which began withdrawing from the Union. They vowed to uphold slavery and formed the Confederacy, triggering the start of the American Civil War.
I do want to learn more about the American Civil War, so if anyone's got any I'll say that again. If anyone's got any recommendations for material, please do let me know.
A year into the conflict, Lincoln abolished slavery in Washington, D.C., legally freeing more than 3,000 people. And 5 months later, he announced the Emancipation Proclamation. It promised freedom to the 3.5 million people enslaved in Confederate states.
What about the other 500,000?
But it would only be fulfilled if the rebelling states didn't rejoin the Union by January 1st, 1863. And it bore no mention of the roughly 500,000 people in bondage in the border states of Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri that hadn't seceded. When the Confederacy refused to surrender, Union soldiers began announcing emancipation. But many southern areas remained under Confederate control, making it impossible to actually implement abolition throughout the South. The war raged on for 2 more years, and on January 31st, 1865, Congress passed the 13th Amendment. It promised to end slavery throughout the U.S., except as punishment for a crime.
Except as punishment for a crime. So slavery would be abolished, but in exceptional circumstances where if you committed a crime, you could still be a slave? If someone could explain to me what that means, I'm not sure.
But to go into effect, 27 states would have to ratify it first. Meanwhile, the Civil War virtually ended with the surrender of Confederate General Robert E. Lee on April 9, 1865. But although slavery was technically illegal in all southern states, it still persisted in the last bastions of the Confederacy. There, enslavers like Nealon continued to evade abolition until forced. This was also the case when Union General Gordon Granger marched his troops into Galveston, Texas on June 19th and announced that all enslaved people there were officially free.
Those people who kept slaves, who should have actually followed the abolition and released them, I would love to know if they got punished. Like, did they get jailed? Did they get the possessions confiscated? Or did they just get basically a slap on the wrist and said, carry on? Because there's nothing better than seeing slavers getting the comeuppance. I mean, Django Unchained was just a pure work of fiction, but you found satisfaction in some of the things that was on that film. Michael Fassbender did an absolute fantastic job in 12 Years a Slave because, God, the amount of hatred I had for his character, impalpable.
And had been for more than 2 years. Still, at this point, people remained legally enslaved in the border states. It wasn't until more than 5 months later, on December 6, 1865, that the 13th Amendment was finally ratified. This formally ended chattel slavery in the U.S. Because official emancipation was a staggered process, people in different places commemorated it on different dates. Those in Galveston, Texas, began celebrating Juneteenth, a combination of June and 19th, on the very first anniversary of General Granger's announcement. Over time, smaller Juneteenth gatherings gave way to large parades, and the tradition eventually became the most widespread of emancipation celebrations.
2020. So what happened in 2020 that made it more widespread? I mean, it shouldn't be. COVID happened in 2020. We're all aware of that. Jesus, what a long 2 years that was. But what happened in 2020 to make it a bit more, I don't know, wider known or wider, more celebrated? Also, if there were different dates and June 19th just became the sort of the leading date, wouldn't like something like Emancipation Day or something make more sense? I'm not taking away Juneteenth. Historically, if that's the way, that's the way.
But while chattel slavery had officially ended, racial inequality, oppression, and terror had not. Celebrating emancipation was itself an act of continued resistance. And it wasn't until 2021 that Juneteenth became a federal holiday. Today, Juneteenth holds profound significance as a celebration of the demise of slavery, the righteous pursuit of true freedom for all, and a continued pledge to remember the past and dream the future. People resisted slavery in the U.S. as long as it persisted, uncovered the story of those who escaped slavery, and created a secret society in the Great Dismal Swamp with this video. Or learn about the incredible courage of Harriet Tubman with this video.
I think I saw, there was a banner with a face on it. Was that George Floyd? I think there was also an image of a police officer kneeling on somebody on the ground. So it looks to me like George Floyd. Was that 2020? Was that something to do with the 2020 date and why it was sort of made a federal holiday in 2021? Which would have been Biden. So it's funny because I would have, let me know if that's the case. I need to get down in the rabbit hole with some of these things. That was a really good introduction to it, but I'm sure there's a lot more to the story. Let me know what you think. I'll see you on the next one.